When did you go to the military? Straight after high school?
Yeah, so we'll just do a quick intro. So I joined the military straight out of college, 2000,
College.
straight out of high school, excuse me, 19, and joined the reserves. Did an 8-year contract, was activated for different trainings, and deployed at 21
Did you say
to,
8-year contract?
yeah, reserves do a longer contract. They basically double it if you're reserves, because they do 3 or 4 years. But was activated and deployed to Afghanistan in 2012. I joined the engineer corps, spent about a year training between basic and AIT in Fort Leonard Wood because I thought I wanted to be an engineer.
Where's Lineman?
Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, aka Fort Lost in the Woods. Yeah, not many people have. It's about an hour south of St. Louis.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did you go to the Ozarks when you were there?
I did. We got reckless at the Ozarks, a bunch of 19-year-old renegades. We'll leave it at that.
I hung out there once, but it wasn't reckless. We were hanging out and staying at like a family's house, but you could see how it can get loose over there.
Yeah, you got Mizzou State, or was it Mizzou? Yeah,
Yeah.
big school.
All right, sorry. So you basic.
Yeah, so high level flow, graduated high school, probably wasn't mature enough in all transparency to go to school. I wanted to, but I always knew I wanted to serve, whether that was enlisted or the officer route. At that time, obviously, we were in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Worked with my Army recruiter, went to MEPS, which is like the administrative intake of whatever branch of service you choose to go to. They administer the test. It's called the ASVAB. And depending on your score, they give you an array of military occupational specialties, MOS, and they all have different basically packages. So at the time, 18, 19, I scored pretty well. And I went for a technical engineer. And that was because of the bonus
Because you scored well at
and the
money.
bonus and the incentives. Yeah. Also thought I wanted to be an engineer, like we all do. I think when we're younger, we think we know what we want until we're on the job. That was kind of my experience. So I went to training at 19, Fort Jackson to Fort Leonard Wood, came home, was living in New Jersey, back with the family, working a couple different jobs while going to college. And
Where'd you go there?
I went to a local community college. I worked 2 or 3 jobs. And funny story, so I kind of regretted not going active duty because I was just drinking the Kool-Aid of joining and I really loved it. Yeah, I prioritized school at the time, got into training, got a taste of the military, really thrived in that regimented environment, competitiveness, just meeting people from all walks of life. Like I really enjoyed that. I think I still do.
So
Definitely.
you were reserves when you were out in Afghanistan.
Yeah,
So you never went active duty,
right.
but you think you could have had a career in the military.
I just wanted to do it full time. I wanted to live like on base and just be around those people, full time. I don't think I would ever get on 20 years and retired, but I wanted to do it, full
Yeah.
time for 4 years at least. But yeah, I was always pretty physically fit. I was capable. I was a multi-sport athlete growing up, focused on hockey and martial arts. And yeah, so I went to training for about a year, came back, was working, going to school, and at 20, we got orders. They were deploying to Afghanistan. At the time, I was working a couple jobs and it was kind of like kicking myself in the ass that didn't go full time
Did you
active.
see it coming that you would be, I guess, sent out there
Yeah, yeah, I definitely joined
with the intent?
with the awareness, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to go experience a deployment. So it was funny. I was actually living at a friend's at that time, um, for other reasons, but I was the first in my unit to know we were going. So I kind of got frustrated with life. I was doing the reserve thing, which is basically a weekend out of the month and then a few weeks out of the summer. And that's your kind of standard obligation unless you volunteer for different schools. But so I put in my packet actually to go to Special Forces selections, went through like the preliminary testing. That's a pretty robust packet. You have to get company commander sign off, endorsement, all that. And I didn't hear back from them for a couple months, which is longer than normal, or
Okay.
at least what I expected from what they told me. So I actually ended up going to my congressman. I scheduled an interview because I wanted to know where my packet was in processing, and they had me come in and basically a congressional investigation into like low-level congressional investigation. They expedited it.
See what's going on.
2 days later, I got a note in the mail that said the reason why this is taking so long is because we actually realize there's overlap and your unit is slated to go overseas to Afghanistan. So that's how I found out. Then at about 8 months from that point, I'd be on a plane going overseas. So
You had to wait 8 months before you left? So you're sitting there for 8 months like I'm going?
yeah, so they give you a warno or a warning order, right? Which is kind of like a heads up. And then they cut you like official orders. And that's when everyone's locked in. You're slated for specific times, patient, logistics are nailed down. But it was just funny because that's how I found out. And so I was the first one to know of the lower enlisted guys in my unit, that was on, that we were slated. So, I called up my buddies and, yeah, remember,
By the way.
yeah, lots of nervous energy. I remember starting to run even more than I was already, at like 2, 3 in the morning and running like 3 to 5 miles. And my buddies would be walking back from like house parties and be like, is that Kazai? Like 3, 4 in the morning. Yeah.
You're
Um,
just envisioning being in Afghanistan.
I was just pumped up. I think preparation is key to anything. I was young, just charged.
How many years did you spend in the Army? Reserves.
Reserves 8 years.
You did spend all 8 years.
Yeah, I did 8-year contract. Like I said, I was a technical engineer, deployed, rolled my sleeves up, did the work. Um, that included like AutoCAD work, topography, and then more like the functional stuff was like actually being on the project site. So we did like base expansion. We did a huge bridge mission that took a couple months down in Helmand province. And that was more or less like, when I say when people, I remember when I started interviewing for corporate jobs back in the States, I'd always get tripped up on this answer talking about, when my professional career started and how to word in civilian terms, like what I did, right? Because it's a completely different vernacular.
Yeah.
So
acronyms and all those.
Yeah,
things.
but plainly put, I mean, I was put in some pretty significant leadership roles and had some serious responsibility at 21 years old. Probably me and another guy on a multi-million dollar project, directing, heavy equipment operators and
Yeah.
making sure, the horizontal construction aspect of these developments were to standard and meeting certain gates, timelines, et cetera. So that was kind of my first, um, trial by fire, seriously. Being a project manager,
Whole bunch of responsibility.
reporting up, managing down, making sure like timelines were adhered to, all while under pretty significant stress.
Were you guys safe where you were at?
I don't think there's anywhere over there that you're completely safe. I know there's
There's like,
and just to
I guess.
demystify, like everyone's experience on any given deployment varies.
Yeah.
It's not a one size fits all thing at all. But there's a few jobs or MOSs that are outside the wire, and engineers are definitely part of that. So you have infantry engineers, psyops, and a few other that are really outside. You could also go, to Afghanistan and sit in a fob and do finance. So,
Yeah.
but we need that. I'm not talking down.
No,
about it.
the only never served. In a lot of ways, I regret it because I was like tested in that way. So the only exposure I have, other than like Ryan, what's his name, Sean Ryan's podcast, is movies. So and most movies take place outside the wire, I would guess, right? But then there's the movie Jarhead with what's his name, Jake Gyllenhaal, and so much of it is like the frustration of being out there but not having any real activities to do. And like some of these guys are like just itching to shoot someone because they're stuck, I would guess, like inside the wire. They're like on base. It's like it's what it's like to live in Iraq in base and have nowhere to go. Yeah. And it's like frustrating. And I was like, what's going on here? But I guess like you said, different deployment is different. Everyone is told what to do and has different jobs, and it's pretty incredible.
So, I mean, the whole time I never let go of the idea of going to special operations. I was actually obsessed with it, and my plan was to get through that deployment and then go to selections again and try out. So while I was over there, I'd meet with different Green Berets and units that we were supporting from an engineer perspective and just pick their brain, just try to learn more about their day-to-day, their culture, like who they are, how they get there, right? And yeah, I mean, life happens, things change, but I got a pretty bad knee injury. I went to college. I ended up going to college at FIU down in
That's
Miami
right.
when I got
Blew up your
back.
knee.
Yeah,
Is that what stopped the
that was a
your journey
big
towards golf?
detour, I guess. It's never too late. I can still do it.
Isn't it 36 is the latest,
Yeah,
oldest you can be to enlist?
yeah.
When I hit 37, it was like in a depressing moment for me.
You,
The military wouldn't even take me right now.
look, the Army is known for the waivers. So if you have at least the baseline physical standards
Oh, really?
and yeah, there's always some margin.
Chance.
There's some margin. Yeah. But it's definitely a lifestyle and of its own and definitely a big sacrifice to be made. But yeah, when I was 21 came back and then went finished school at FIU down in Miami and had a little bit of fun there.
So you can skip FIU. Yeah. How shifting over? How quickly? At what age? Let's start over. FIU. How old were you when you graduated? And then when did you get into sales? Like, how did that transition college to sales?
Yeah, I went and I did away with the whole engineering idea. I'm like I enjoyed my time, but I couldn't see myself being an engineer
Hmm.
long term. But it's interesting, and we'll get there, like where I'm at now, how I still very much enjoy similar attributes of the job in terms of just problem solving,
Mm.
right? So I got involved with marketing and then the sales program in college where we would go and like do these mock sales competitions at different universities. Actually, the first time I was here in Atlanta was for one of those events hosted by Kennesaw State.
That's right. They have a sales program. I
Yeah.
guess so.
But yeah, I mean, I did my first sales intern was at Xerox, which I landed through one of those competitions. So I placed somewhere in the top three and then got, recognized and landed at Xerox. So I spent a summer up in New York City back where my family is.
And that's a old school traditional route into sales, starting at selling copiers.
Yeah, yeah. And then I mean, it ended up at SAP. Funny enough, when I was there, Bill McDermott, who was their CEO at the time, he's now at ServiceNow. He started his sales career at Xerox, and he writes about that in his book Winner's Dream.
Interesting. What is it about selling for Xerox or selling copiers that is, I guess, foundational, like a place to start for people?
I think it's a pretty straightforward commoditized sale. I wasn't like gassed up about the product itself. I think it was just more at that time I was looking
Yeah.
for experience. It's a, Fortune 500 company, I believe still. And it was in the city, so it was more of an experience thing, something to build the resume. I don't have to tell
It's
you.
built around having someone fresh out, it seems like. Like the roles are for someone who doesn't necessarily have a ton of experience. And like you said, it's commoditized. So
Yeah.
you're not introducing a new technology or a new solution. It's us or them, right?
Yeah, I
You're
mean,
not
at
selling a
that
foreign object.
Yeah, looking back at it, I mean, I didn't learn a whole lot. It was more of an experience. I got to shadow meetings. I wasn't really tasked with much other than some like Excel work, doing some market research. It wasn't really challenging, but it was a great experience, of course, because of where I was at, which is a awesome
Yeah.
culture in itself. And then just seeing the lifestyle, right? Which is like with what you're doing is paramount. Like understanding beyond the job description, the roles or responsibilities and the black and white rack is like, okay, how does this translate? How does this look on a day to day?
Hmm.
Right? What's the practical view of it?
How do you get from it's really cutting your teeth. So for me, cutting my teeth, I did it in New York and I was helping in leads for my cousin who's a real estate agent, real estate broker. And he had gone to a lot of seminars and stuff. And he was like, look, I'm going to change things around for myself instead of just renting out apartments. I need to stop messing around. I can take this seriously. Like I have so many clients
Mhm.
and I'm going to shift into sales in New York City. But what I need to do is have someone supporting me, sending out e-blasting and all this stuff. And the internet wasn't what it is today, where you have AI or these tools that can like automate a lot of your things. So I was like, calling, just grunt work. But being in the city and next to someone who knows what they're doing, and they're like, go do this, go do that, don't do this. When you're on the phone, say that, don't say this, or you're just it's like, don't say anything, and you just listen to the conversation, and you just absorb. You need that, otherwise, you just because you feel like a blank canvas or just a blob of mush. It's like, I have this potential, but I don't know what to do with it. I don't know what to say, how to speak. I don't know the lingo, any of it. And then you have all these internal feelings of inadequacy as a young person. And if you don't, then you honestly, I think you're a little strange, right?
Yeah.
If you're overconfident, because you have to be ready to be coached. So I say all that to say I didn't have a traditional cut your teeth other than that. And that was like in college. But I think like the more traditional approach to like just getting into an entry level sales role is copiers, Xerox, enterprise rent a car, that world.
Northwestern Mutual.
Yeah, insurance
Yeah.
sales. And then what was the other one? ADP.
Yeah.
ADP is another one.
So there's definitely sales organizations out there that do a really good job and have, intentional programs to attract early talent at varying degrees. So to go back to your question, I mean, I wouldn't say I cut my teeth in sales at Xerox. That was an internship, and it was an experience, paid experience. Where I really cut my teeth in sales was at Insight Global,
Okay.
staffing and recruit IT at the time. They've expanded now, but they were IT staffing and recruiting, where everybody starts as a recruiter. They're headquartered here in Atlanta, and at the time, it was pretty. This could go in a few different directions. We talk about like ego and kind of the fine balance, especially in a sales world, being highly self-aware of your strengths, your weaknesses, always checking your ego, but at the same time being competent and confident.
Yeah.
Right. Which is a
That's
dance.
a balance. Yeah.
It's a dance. And in just one statement, right, in a high stakes type of client engagement, you can, trust is won in drops, lost in buckets, right? Sort of deal. So like
Never heard that.
the stakes are high, which I think speaks to, another idea, which is like how important the process is of going somewhere that's willing to invest in you, let you make mistakes, get at bats, and cut your teeth.
Yeah.
Right. And invest in your development in real life practical sales cycles.
That's a good point. I've never really thought through. So I generally say cut your teeth when you're starting out. But to your point, cutting your teeth is trying and failing and figuring out what it all is. What are you good at? What are you not? How to do it. And just the process of failing, succeeding, fail, 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 succeed, fail, 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 succeed. And then figuring out, all right, next time I'm going to not say that. Next time I'm going to try this. I'm going to make a phone call. Hey, like I keep bumping into this. How do I do that? So when I hear Xerox, I know that myself and other managers that I've worked with would have highly valued that, even though you don't think that was cutting your teeth, and probably wasn't because you were saying it was shadowing and doing grunt work, but you were exposed to that world, that life, right? Which gave you like a head start. And at the time, it's probably underappreciated. I'm not speaking for you, but I totally get what you're saying. Where now at Insight Global, you've probably had some, I'm guessing, because I've had them, moments where you're like super pumped up for tomorrow's meeting, where you're getting the opportunity to do something for the first time, and then it might go well, or it might go poorly, and then you're like 3 times just feeling as worse as you were the day before, excited, and you're just like, this isn't for me. I don't know. I can't. I don't know if this. You just feel terrible. That is cutting your teeth, right? Like going through the highs and lows, and then trying to figure out as you get better, but also this finding the steadiness that every sales guy has. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like you said, there's a lot to go with it, but
cutting your teeth, I mean, you can say that in many different ways, but ultimately, I think it boils down to being and getting comfortable with the unknown is discomfort. And we like to have projections. Publicly traded companies are quarterly operated because investors and private equity firms and all the financial mechanisms behind the backers behind it want
hedge funds,
predictability, right? And that boils down to the individual. Like we like predictability as human beings. So like being in sales for me was like the only option coming out of the military background, sports background, and I think you would agree in your experience, like the best sales professionals or the ones that at least last, right, usually have a very similar DNA, usually come from a competitive background of some sort, right? Because you're the front line, right? My big reference point, first reference point, right, is military. So like a lot of my thoughts and sayings will come from that. But like you're the front line, right? You're the first shift, or you're the athlete on the field.
You're the face of the organization.
Right.
It could be like 10,000 people in your organization. Your customer sees you, and however you project yourself is their perception of the company.
You're responsible for that company's revenue and ultimately their survival.
Yeah.
Their growth and paying. I mean, that's a lot. That sounds cocky, but it's funny.
There's
Like as a salesperson, you're indirectly ultimately paying for all the other employees.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like the person who says to the cop, like, I'm paying your salary.
Right.
You don't want to say that. Like,
Yeah,
if
but it's
you
true.
track the dollar.
Yeah.
But in reality, though, we've had this conversation before, and I don't know if you want to have it on camera.
Roll it.
We could talk about it. I'll start it this way. The organizations that I loved working for were the ones that prided themselves on being a sales organization.
Yeah.
And we support the sales people because
you
they're the ones that
conservative?
generate the funds. I think it was you who told me that you're with an organization or you were with various organizations, and some of which, dancing around it, might not have valued the salesperson as much one way or another. And that culture is, I don't know, tell me.
Yeah. I think a lot of things translate, whether we're talking tech sales, which is ultimately where my path led me. My first sales role was with Insight Global, this staffing and recruiting company. I really cut my teeth there. It was basically the corporate military, suit and tie every day. They told you what colors to wear. 7:30 start, not a minute late. I vividly remember they had just opened up a new office in Miami in the Wells Fargo building on the 54th floor, I believe. Really cool view. It's kind of enticing, but we're launching a new office and I was like the newest hire. And so we were paired with a mentor or buddy, and they basically like showed us the ropes and also kept us accountable. So a minute or two late, I was getting a phone call. And I'm like, this feels very, different way. This feels
very easy to be late in New York too.
Yeah. Well, this was Miami.
Oh, it was Miami.
But equally challenging. Yeah.
Maybe even more
with the way people drive there. The sense of urgency there is
that's why. Okay. I was like, where's the Wells Fargo building in New York? But
yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
But I only spent a year there. Great place to learn fundamental sales skills that I still use and value today. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And just like sidebar, again, back to like when you think about like what makes successful sales professionals, I related back to the reference point in the military, like the best infantry units, the best special operators would constantly say they just do the fundamentals exceptionally well.
Yeah.
Right. Simple is not easy, but doing the simple things, right, will make you successful.
Interesting.
And consistency with those things and how those fundamental skills that you get really good at, usually when you're early on in your career, they get you to a point of success. There's almost like a bell curve. The more success you get, you almost, again, complacency is a default nature of human beings, unless you're constantly aware and challenging yourself, right? Uphold a certain standard and grow even better. Like you will, and I've seen it myself, right? Like the more success I saw, I had to fight complacency more, right?
Yeah. Yes.
You let your foot off the gas.
100%.
You get a taste of a little success, and you think, that's the ego kicks back in, right?
Yourself.
The ego's the enemy
in a lot of ways. Percent. That's sales, and then just in life. I mean, there's a lot of places I could take that, but 100% agree with the fundamental piece. Baseball guy. I know a lot of guys who got drafted, and I asked them questions like, what are they? So minor leagues is this massive process to get to the bigs, unlike a lot of other professional sports. What are these guys doing in the minor leagues? And it's just like fundamentals. Shortstops are not practicing how to dive for a ball and make a spectacular
Derek Jeter throw.
Correct. 95% of the time, if not more, it's going to be a standard play.
Right.
You do not mess up the standard play. You're a fantastic athlete. You'll probably make a really great play and pat on the back. It's kind of like what my dad said. He goes, stop taking these like as a kid, you're taking half court shots, trying to be cool. He's like, you never do that. You're never going to get good. You're not, Steph Curry makes it look cool. And I can only imagine how many kids are trying to do that. And they're just wasting their time from just get your free throws in, because when it comes to sales, that's like, I don't know if I've ever said this out loud, but I quietly know that when I start like losing, I don't see, like, I haven't had success in a couple weeks, a couple months, whatever it is. It's because I'm getting off like the line of stick to the fundamentals. I'm like, oh, we tried this, let me do that, whatever it may be. But I'm not like, okay, here is like just the guidelines that have been given to me by my company or my mentors to just stick with this. Like all these books essentially say the same thing in different ways. And it's just like the process of being successful. Right?
Trusting the process.
Sales funnel, here's how you handle
Consistency.
conversations. And then you kind of naturally, we're humans, we're not robots, right? So we just kind of move in different directions. And that kind of goes into the last thing I was thinking is the most successful, let's say, let me put it this way, the richest people in the world, or those that you know that are ultra successful in whatever industry, those people seem incredibly obsessive. Strangely, they're like oddballs if you meet with them. They're like compulsive, but that's what it takes because let's say you make $1,000 for the first time or 500K or whatever your number is where you like, holy this is,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? You start to enjoy other things or move in different directions. Those who like get to the point where they're making hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, they're obsessive compulsive because they stick, if I'm making a comparison,
Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every day.
Right, driving a Corolla or something to work after his company's worth $1 billion or something.
Yeah.
So, the more that you can build discipline into your life to sticking to the fundamentals of what it is, you'll find your way. Pause. Let me start over. We're back. It's kind of, we're back. I'll bring it back to baseball. That's my thing. Some of the best hitters that I know can't teach anyone else how to hit. They just know how to do it. And sometimes I'm like, is he just dumb and somebody just taught him the right way and he just sticks to it? But sometimes it's just hard to explain. Translating that to sales, some of these guys who are sales leaders, sales managers have a difficult time not communicating, but really speaking to the person who's brand new and saying, here's what you need. And that's what you've done. You've kind of spoken about Xerox and what it was like there, and then moving over to Insight Global and what they expected of you. Coming out of college, and you have all this knowledge and information, but it's like, how do I apply it to the world? You feel like almost useless looking at other people talking about these intense conversations. You don't really know what's going on. A lot of people can't translate that into speaking to someone who's fresh out of college, right? Because that's so far away. That mindset has disappeared. It's gone. You've built yourself. So younger people have a difficult time. I think a lot of people that I've spoken to have a difficult time visualizing how they're going to be. Like, you're going to be that. Just stay the course. It'll eventually happen.
We live in an age where we see people on TikTok and Instagram and social media in general just achieve massive success, but they're generally speaking anomalies, which diminishes our patience and exactly what we're talking about, commitment to the process.
When I had the idea of a podcast, I loved the idea of not having any notable names. Not that I could get any, but I think there's value in saying this person is the director of so-and-so company. Person might not know the company, might appreciate the role, doesn't know the person, but this is a normal human who could be your neighbor. He's just very successful and has a lot of insight. He's not Elon Musk. He's not Bill Gates. He's not, Donald Trump or any of these people who have made it to this high platform that you know of. There's value in hearing from, someone.
The common John.
The common John.
The common John, and to elaborate on that, like whether we're talking about, and this is just a personal, if you will, but when I choose people that I'm going to spend regular time with, whether that's professionally or outside of work, I like to keep a mix, right, of people that are at my level, peers, so to speak. We can bounce ideas off of each other, right? We're more or less tackling the same challenges. We're in the same life stage, and there's a lot of connection and relatability, camaraderie, etc. Those are usually like your better friends, and those are usually who become better friends even in the workplace. And I stay in touch with a bunch of guys I used to work with in the past. And then there's two other categories. It's I think there's value and there's learning opportunity. First, I'll say is people that are a couple steps behind you, right? You're further along down the road, right? Which in essence is what you're doing here, launching, trying to help that earlier generation, people who are earlier in their professional career life to succeed, right? So there's value in, I think oftentimes people look at being a mentor, which I've done in various capacities, as like a time suck, right? But there's tremendous value in that. You do learn in a different way, I'd say, but just as much as being the mentee. The old saying is like there's no better proof of understanding something than when you're able to effectively teach somebody.
Right.
So there's that. And then the last one, of course, is finding people that are, a little bit further down the road from you. Who do you aspire to be like? And from a sales lens, it's not just, I tend to approach, and I truly believe in sales specifically, that authenticity is the common fabric that makes good salespeople. That you're the same person with the same values, ethos, etc. in business as you are in your personal life, right?
Yeah.
And if that's not the case, that should be your North Star, right? It's like, how do I maintain or create linearity between who I am in and out of the office? And I think that's where the magic really happens. And yeah, so
So a couple things there. One, authenticity, 100%. I've said this before. My sales abilities or my success I had in sales took off when I stopped playing this game where it's like there's my personal life and then there's my social life. Like I'm gonna put my professional hat on and use bigger words, and then you know what I mean.
yeah,
And then when I started to just blend it, and it helped when I was working with residents, so doctors training to be surgeons, and they're in this place where they're highly knowledgeable. They are doctors.
Yep.
They can see patients. Patients value them, but they're not surgeons yet, and they're just kind of looking up at their attendings, trying to learn from them, and blending with them helped. But what I wanted to say, I've never had this discussion before, and I've always felt so strongly about all these influencers, or when you're watching these motivational videos and everyone's saying to you, the company you keep or the people around you, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're not going to get better. Like there's value in that. If you're hanging around a bunch
show
of
me your
idiots
friends,
or
I'll show you
potheads,
your future.
correct.
Yeah.
But how many people do you know that take that to its extreme? They chase richer people or people with a whole bunch of followers or clout, and they want to be around them. And like, what are you? What are you as you're doing that? You're just chasing because you feel inadequate. Like there's so many negative things that happen when you're constantly trying to be around something. And a lot of people chase success and they equate that to money. Just
Yeah.
because someone's rich doesn't mean they're a good person or they're going to teach you good things.
Right.
A lot of people have found success in a lot of different ways, and that doesn't mean you need to be around them. Now, who's saying this? Someone who's not a billionaire, right? So maybe that's why I'm not a billionaire, right? But and you're also speaking to someone who is trying to be a mentor to younger people.
You do all right. You're
Right.
not a billionaire, but you do all right.
I do okay. I want to do better. I'm inadequate. No, but the reality is I love that. It's 100% because I want to enjoy the people that I'm around. I want to be relatable. I
Sure.
certainly have people in my life that have done better than me in a lot of ways. And it's not just financial. It could be relationships. It could be exploring the world. It could be spiritual, all these different things. And then, like you said, there's tons of value in helping the people behind you or younger than you who are trying to make it. Because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the people who stopped and had the extra conversation with me
Pass it on.
and pass it on.
Yeah.
That I think it's absolutely necessary for someone to have a mentor type person, if not multiple mentors in different aspects of their life, so that they can aspire or have someone saying, hey, pointing out your blind spots. You don't realize this yet, but you're going to recognize this yet. You don't realize this about yourself. Your parents taught you this, and that's great, but I want you to look at it this way. You grew up in this city, but in the greater scheme of things, this is, you know what I mean? They're exposing you to more.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to do that to others, just like you said, makes you better. Like it's a
100%.
baseball player who's a great hitter but can't explain it, right? Like
Right.
there's value in taking the time to try and explain it, and then you learn a little bit more.
Train the trainer. If
Mhm.
you're able to train the trainer, I think you've mastered something,
Mm.
simply put. But interesting point you made. I think boiled down, the common denominator is how do you define success and how do you find people within those three tiers of ahead, equals, and people you want to give back to, identifying that they more or less had the same definition of success. At service level, we all get into sales because we are money motivated at the surface. But if you peel back a couple layers, right, you'll understand that there's different motives.
Yeah.
Right. And they always say follow the money. You can tell a lot about someone or an organization as a whole, what their values are based on
Yes.
where that money goes. So these are, I mean, this translate. I love, again, I love I truly believe that their sales and the attributes it takes to be successful in sales, which I'm still constantly refining. Far from arrived or made it, but in my short career in sales, I think they're one and the same. And if you view them as mutually independent, you're doing yourself a disservice.
It's the same way you want to challenge yourself in one aspect of life. Sales allows you to challenge yourself in so many ways to take you out of your comfort zone. And it equates to and translates to so many different aspects of life. And maybe I'm speaking for myself, but it was very uncomfortable for me. You wanted to get into sales. Stepped into sales. I didn't have many other options. And the guy who's gonna
That's funny.
saw
That's
potential
a
in me.
funny, yeah, that's a funny comment. Didn't have many other options. It's funny. We can go off on a tear there, but
So for what I thought I was worth.
yeah,
So I left college with a master's degree,
yeah.
but it was also 2011 and the company was bouncing back from the recession.
Mm.
I got my master's because it was 2009 after my undergrad and there was career services department, made friends with them. Hey, I graduated. Is there anything available? Sorry, buddy. I'm like, New York City's right there. You know what I mean? There's no one has a job right now. Go back to school. Thankfully, college baseball team pays for most of my credits. I'm not going to be a baseball coach, so let me go out there. And I go to career services, had nothing. They were like, go to career fairs. I went to 3 Rutgers career fairs, and it's Terminex, like exterminator work, like literally calling into crevices. Like, what's his name?
David Goggins spraying for cockroaches.
Goggins.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I have my master's degree. I'm like, you hiring for managers? I'll take that role, maybe. And then there's like maybe insurance. I was like, my family's not going to take me seriously because you want me to sell to my family. Like, work on your inner network and tell them to switch their insurance over.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know anything. We're not going to switch my insurance over to you.
Yeah.
And then luckily I bumped into a guy and he was like, I'm starting from scratch. I'm tired of hiring sales reps who are experienced but won't listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
They think they know what they're doing.
Ability.
Correct. I need somebody who's coachable. I was like, right here. I don't know what this is. Seems like it helps people. And you seem like you make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go. And then
you show me a check for $70,000.
pretty much. And there was a ride along, and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say this, but like, how much money can you make? And he was like fumbling because he didn't want to like set an expectation, but he also knew that he needed to tell me that you can make some serious money here. A lot of people don't know how much medical sales reps make, but they know it's good money.
It's more or less the best kept secret, right?
Yeah.
And I'll say, I mean, first off, everyone's a salesperson. Everyone, whether you realize it or not. From the CFO to the operations guys to the HR. If you are driving personal interest or the interest of your team within an organization, and everybody has them, they vary, right? In different ways. But everyone, and that's something really important, I think, to understand when you get into sales also, is understanding people, what incentivizes people, what will help this person I'm talking to in operations progress his career if that's what he aspires for.
Right.
Right. And that's not always the case too. That takes vetting. Like, what is this? What role is this person going to play, if any, in the sales process? Are they an influencer? Are they a champion? Are they going to be a hurdle?
Yeah.
You have to identify these things. You have to find the landmine, so to speak, right? But like understanding what incentivizes people, obviously, to get a holistic picture of the dynamic of your prospect. But
you started with everyone is a salesperson to some degree.
right,
but I love what
thanks
you're
for
saying.
bringing me back.
I want to really dive into what you said, and we will, because I'm writing that down right now.
Okay,
Everybody's a
different.
salesperson.
Everyone's a salesperson.
Whether you recognize it or not, you're selling something.
Yes.
You said even if it's your personal.
Whether your title has sales in it or not, you're a salesperson, right? And I think, in the context of what you're doing, which I love, including myself and yourself early on, we were trying to figure it out, and you were just, recalling your story of I fell into it because I had no other options, and I just see glaring, what a misconception, right? That people aren't aware of what sales is as a true, honest profession and a lucrative one if you're coachable, if you are willing to be uncomfortable, because truly there's no harder it is one of the hardest career paths to excel in because you cannot short circuit the process. You have to start in a
cannot.
0x environment or something like I have, right? You have to start with the cold calling and the basic human skills that you cannot be taught that in
Yeah.
school. You can't read that in a book and it just, oh, I know how to do this
Right.
now. Those are fine-tuned skills that even now we're still working on. There's so many levels to that game, and that's what differentiates, within, mid-market accounts to enterprise accounts. Like that is such a complex and highly layered element of success within sales, within being a business professional
Right.
as a whole. 3, 2, 1.
And we're back. You can't short circuit the process.
Right.
So let me take a round, no, actually, let me go directly into it. Let's start over.
Can't short circuit the process.
You can't short circuit the process. There are people that are natural salesmen, right? That doesn't mean you can short circuit the process still. You can have someone who is great at articulating and convincing people to do things. There is so much more to sales than that. That's like being really good at one aspect of it. And it's the aspect that people see. Kind of like, what made Kobe and Jordan great. Not what you saw when the lights were on and everybody was in the stands. It's what they did prior, right? So any medical device sales rep, any medical sales, any salesperson will tell you there is a lot of work that goes into becoming very good, or even getting to the point where you can then show off your sales skills, right? So that's why it's like when you were to ask, like, what are the attributes of the best sales rep? No one says persuasiveness, even though naturally you have to be good at persuasion. It's actually, just grit and determination and resilience. Someone who's coachable, someone who will listen and go through the grunt work to get to the point where they can have the opportunity to then try and convince someone, because there's a whole process to it. So I say that so that those people out there who might not think that they're a salesperson, it's just like a salesperson has to be good at such a wide array of things.
And you've never arrived in any single aspect.
Yes, right. The best ones are still getting better. And the best ones will tell you.
Correct.
They'll be confident in what they can do, but they know damn sure, and they'll say out loud, I still need to get better at that. Or I sucked in that last meeting.
I think you can become confident and more effective and build business acumen, sales skill, and still have the mindset that we're talking about.
Correct.
And still understand that you have to remain a student of the game in perpetuity if you want to remain competitive.
Correct.
Right?
100%.
The second you think you've arrived, you've screwed yourself. Interesting little anecdote on that. In 2014, I think it is. I think we're talking more or less, you call it a jack of all trades, master of none. Back to the military reference points. I swear it's the last one.
No.
14, the Cleveland Browns were the first team to do this. They recognized that that there was a gap in team development,
Okay.
in recruiting,
Yeah.
and then the development of those players. Right, their players are their greatest assets. At the end of the day, every team's a business.
This is a great analogy. Yeah.
So they went about hiring a retired, I think, lieutenant colonel from Army Special Forces, the Green Berets. I think, unbiasedly or biasedly, are the most unique special operations fighting force amongst the different branches.
That's biased.
That's definitely biased. All right. No, they all have their own charter, right? They all have their own specialty, skill set, mission set, etc. And that's why they have different trainings and different pipelines, right? But Green Berets, I think, are unique in the sense that, and this is why the Browns hired this guy, is when they look at candidates across the Army, one, you have to meet a certain age threshold. So they want a level of maturity. They want a level to add on top of that. They want people, for instance, in the last, 20 years that we've been at various wars, people with combat experience, real life experience. They want maturity. They want people who are intelligent, who have EQ, the highest level of physical fitness, right? And these are all different, like These are all different success criteria or metrics that they gauge a man on. They call it the whole man assessment methodology. So the Cleveland Browns adopted this, as long story short,
The whole man method.
the whole man assessment methodology. And they brought this retired lieutenant colonel who did this for SF to come in and implement this methodology in their team
Right.
development program. So I think that speaks volumes.
100%.
If the elite fighting force and the NFL is recognizing that and realizing that, the best teams, because at the end of the day, while you might be by doctrine an individual contributor, organizationally, you are another player on a team that rolls into a VP that makes up, an aggregate to an aggregate to an aggregate quota. So yeah, I think like development is a mindset, being an understanding. It's not about just the art of persuasion. It's not about
How fast is your 40-yard dash?
right. Yeah. It's who are you on the back to our point. It's who you are on the field and off the field.
Yeah.
Right. And we can go into different granular kind of subsets of that, like the different types of sales roles, right? You have BDRs, like, traditional sales role, BDR, your business development, right? How good are you how good are you at messaging and building demand and interest to secure a meeting for someone who's more skilled at being a little more consultative?
Right.
In my space would be a little more technical or experience in running a sales process. And then moving on to like maybe that's account management or like the farmer role. And then you have hunter roles.
Yes.
Right. And these are different hats, and there's clear lines, right? Based on, it's all dependent on industry, like whether medical, technical, real estate, whatever you name it. Like these are all different hats you must learn how to be proficient in, regardless of what you're selling, where you're selling.
Yes. So like there are, no matter what profession or what it is in life, allow yourself to be challenged. And again, I'm speaking to the youth fresh out of schooling, where your whole life was schooling and you're trying to figure out what you're good at and you think you might know. Most people don't. Throw yourself into something where you'll be challenged. Get as proficient as you can at all the things that you can, which essentially are the grunt work stuff. You'll find yourself getting put in situations where you'll find out what you're good at and not. Don't be deterred by the fact that you're going to fail, because that's fine. Eventually, you'll start to figure out where you belong in the world, like where you naturally
Through the process.
Can't
short circuit the process.
You can't short circuit the process. So example that I've given to a lot of people, because it's one that I'm embarrassed of, or I was embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
And then now I'm like, it's just fact and it's okay. Stryker Orthopedics, or Stryker in general, utilizes the company called Gallup to give everyone a self-assessment test and all sorts of self-assessment tests.
Now, they're important.
Yes. Now, every major large sales company has these assessment tests.
I've lost count of how many I've done.
Right. Now, at Stryker, if you were to walk into the headquarters and you walk through the hallways and you peek into different offices, you'll see one consistent thing. On everyone's desk, you'll see a plaque or whatever that has that person's top 5, their top 5 strengths. So everyone takes a strengths finder.
Does it have their horoscope on there too?
Pretty much it's their horoscope. It's like he's a Gemini. So in the strengths finder, there's like 30 something, 32, 33 strengths that you can be. And in the test, it's like, what would you do in this situation, or how do you feel about it this way or that way? That one or that one, that one or that one, over and over again. And it's like, it doesn't want you to think. You shouldn't think, and you just go with it. My guidance to those people who are taking is just like, put your confident sales hat on when you take it, okay? The person that you want yourself to be. And then you take this exam, you get the results back, and it says, here are your top 5 strengths. Now, if you look, it'll rank all your strengths. Now, what are these strengths? They're descriptive words of who you are naturally or who you're not at the bottom of the list. So words like maximizer, competitive, woo is one, win people over, analytical, strategic, all these different descriptions of who you are. I got my top 5 back, and it was the most embarrassing thing ever, compared to what the company valued, what they were looking for people in my role. So people in my role, they were looking for competitive, absolutely, maximizer. And that's why I keep using those words, because those are the ones that I was hoping would be on there. And my boss, jokingly, but not jokingly, and I respected him for it, he was like, what is this, when he saw mine? He's like, what are you, not competitive? And I was like, I played Division I baseball. I played sports my whole life. I'm competitive. This is ridiculous. And I threw the freaking top 5.
They made you take
my draw. No, they said that's who you are for life. Like, there's no retake. That's just who I am. So it was for me. It was.
We rebuke that.
But, but a year later, I'm cleaning out my drawer or whatever it is, and I look at it, and I'm like, this is me. And what that boss told me, even though he made fun of me for it, it's like the important part was this: you don't have to become everything. Like you are not supposed to be the jack of all trades, right?
It's the North Star. It's not a reality.
Right. So if you are someone who is, we'll stick with competitive, recognize that and use that to your advantage and don't let it be your downfall.
Yeah.
If you are not whatever it is, recognize that and don't try and spend your time trying to become that. So for me, focus, context, responsible, analytical, and learner, which is just like, what does that mean? This doesn't sound like a salesperson. But if I use that to my advantage, I recognize that I can get hyper focused. That can be a great trait. That can be a really poor trait. You probably see me spending too many hours in my office and not doing other things because I get hyper focused. I have to recognize that about myself. Context is the past. I need to understand the past. Like I like, tell me about how you grew up. And like, I feel like I know who I'm talking to. I apply that to a sale. I want to understand what the company, what the organization is intending to do. How did they get here? How did you get into this role? Which tells me where you're trying to go. Right. And I recognize a lot of people appreciate those kind of questions. Seeing him as a person, where they were, their life, you care about their life. And suddenly I care about your life. This person gives a shit, not just about the sale. Right. I'm going to use that to my advantage as opposed to the competitive guy who's just trying to get the sale. Right. And just wants to win. It's like, no. I'm trying to understand, and then responsibility, all these different things. So taking a step back, it's just recognizing who you are is insanely important. However, when you're fresh out of college, throw yourself out there so that you can get the feedback, which takes years. And the feedback
You
is
need the data
listening. You need the data.
to put into the model to get the output.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
again, back to what we're saying, you cannot
That's really
short
good.
circuit the process.
Correct.
There's no shortcut,
You have to put yourself through it.
right? If you want a shortcut, go via TikTok.
Which is
No
why-
knock on TikTokers. I envy them. I wish I had something as cool, anyway,
Clout, you want the clout.
yeah, whatever.
But I really do. The only reason there's multiple reasons, and this probably has nothing to do with podcasts, but like not having been in the military, I regret, even though it's crazy because if I was in the military, it would have been during war times. It's like, are you sure you want to do that? But the reality is, I would have liked to challenge myself to see how where I would have ended up.
Hmm.
And then there's also the protecting your country aspect. And then there's the aspect of men have been at war since forever, whether it's protecting your cave, your country, your king, your whatever, your home, your community. War is life, as terrible as it can be from what I hear, that's what I hate about it. It is a part of life. And I never got to experience being a part of that. The only thing I can speak to is the camaraderie of a baseball team and
That's
the protecting of your family and stuff like that. But you know what I'm saying?
absolutely, and that's why I love, as someone who I voiced earlier was never interested in making the military a career. This is same as I think athletes would echo this is whatever industry you're selling in is the closest thing to aligning with your strengths and that DNA as a competitive, risk taker, comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? But I think you made a couple good points, not too many, but a couple. So I think about it. One of the first books that a mentor early on in my sales career recommended was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And you talked about one of them, which was seek to understand. And like taking the time, this is under the umbrella of like, being a lifelong learner, continuous growth, keeping an open mindset, especially now more than ever, because the market, whether it's medical or tech or you name it, is only continuing to increase the rate of change. Right, everything's changing
Yes.
at a rapid pace, and that tempo or that speed is only increasing, which means you need to check the ego. You need to understand that you're never going to know it all, and you need to your point, be self-aware of where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and be able and humble and willing to leverage other people's strengths that are your weaknesses, right? Because a lot of times, if we're talking about like enterprise level sales, you're talking about high ticket items, medicals, prime, finance, technical solutions, right? These are B2B, large enterprise
Big
sales
impact
cycles
on
that have huge impact on an organization as a whole, right? They usually align with like the most strategic initiatives, board level directives that you hear on an earnings call if they're public. And so it's a team sport is what I'm trying to get at. And if you're not a team player and you're not self-aware and you're a ball hog, metaphorically, you are going to be a liability to your team and ultimately yourself, I think, right? You do have those anomalies that are like the lone wolves,
Yeah.
but those only succeed in certain niche industries and segment types.
Yes.
And that's a conversation
And
for another
also
day. But
certain times in like within those years of that industry in that time
right,
in that location, those that are
context
that
matters
good,
there. Yeah.
the company will kind of leave them alone. He keeps hitting quota, let him do what he's doing. He's not burning the house down. Clearly, he's not, a team player and supporting all of our other initiatives. We'll worry about everybody else. Every company has that anomaly, that star player, so to speak.
Hmm.
But you can't have a ton of those. That won't happen. You need to be a part of
So let's talk
the
about
greater goal
let's lean into mindset, right? All right.
mindset.
Let's lean into mindset. So we've covered a lot, I think, covered a lot. We could come back to like breaking into a sales organization.
Yeah, I want to talk
Right,
about
We kind
interviews
of
in a minute.
quick recap,
But
like breaking in, right? Things you can do now proactively. I'll use my personal anecdote, like things that translated in hindsight well into getting into the right org. And you may get into a sales role, and this goes for sales or non-sales, but like in your 20s, let's face it, like you're just it's an experiment. You're trying to figure out what it is you actually like. I think I was fortunate enough to have fulfilled my desire to serve my country, really get some legitimate real world experience, lead people, run projects, be held accountable, manage up, manage down, all that good stuff.
that's why sales companies like hiring military vets.
Yeah, they like hiring people who are competitive, regimented, right? And I think you touched on it earlier, like coachability,
Mm.
right? The criteria scope is a lot less at the entry level, which is in, the type of people that you're catering to their favor, right?
Yeah.
But how do you get a leg up? Like, let's not just figure out how to get in, but let's figure out how to get in and have a leg up and be ahead of the curve. Because let's face it, you're in sales, you're in a constantly competitive environment, whether it's against your peers or other regions or your direct competitors, right? You are a hunter. But I wanted to kind of shift to, I think we're on a good path there talking about mindset. Once you're in a sales role, right? You're in your entry level sales role that's usually in the form of a BDR, business development rep, or a sales development rep, SDR, and you are learning what I call, we all learn what leadership is, right? At a high level, but you're learning what followership is. And I know that's not a word, but it is a concept that you definitely learn in sport team environments,
Yeah.
military. You cannot truly be an effective leader unless you have already learned how to be an effective follower,
Right.
which just boils down to being a team player.
Yes.
Right. How do you check your ego and at the door and serve your team and have a mindset of what can I do each and every moment, each and every day, whether it's practice, game time, right, training, or overseas, whatever space that is, to serve the guy to your left and right,
Yeah.
and ultimately the team's success.
I went to school for business management. Loved the business aspect. It was the only thing that resonated with me, which is why I made it my major and went to school for it. But it never connected to me. There was like a big gap. A didn't connect to B to C is because how am I supposed to manage? You're teaching me how to manage. And it's just like a general thing. It's like, what organization can I step in and manage people if I haven't done what they've done? It just never made sense to me. It's like they're preparing me for something. And it makes sense if I eventually become a manager. But the idea was you're going to leave with this degree before the recession and you're going to get a management role. How am I expect to manage people when I don't know what they're doing? I don't care how many training books you give me.
Yeah.
There's a massive you have to be able to learn and bite your lip at times, right? And bite your tongue and just figure out, just respect the process and understand that, you have to work your way to
That they're in your stripes,
Mm.
so to speak. Maybe that paints the idea we're talking about in a different way, but equally relevant. God, I lost my thought.
That's fine. I might have taken you in a different direction, but again, we can cut this.
What were we saying? Yeah, no, what were we saying?
No, so you were talking about mindset, and that's where it started.
Followership.
Followership. To be a good leader, you need to be a follower.
So what I think what you're talking about, which is the same learning curve, whether you just graduated from with your undergrad or your master's degree in your case, you can ace every test, right? You can theoretically understand concepts of leadership, concepts of business,
Yeah.
etc.
Read
But
all the books you
at
want.
the end of the day, you're going to hit an influx point or an intersection of practitioner versus professor, right? And like back to David Goggins, he talks about this all the time. He was dyslexic. He had a number of challenges, learning inhibitors. But at the end of the day, he worked hard. He overcame those challenges. And because of that, because he learned through the process of embracing the suck, of grinding it out, whatever handle you want to throw on. Follow the process, which is not pretty.
Yeah.
And if it is pretty, it's the wrong process, probably, right? Or you're a true anomaly. But to be a practitioner of what you're doing, what you're talking about, is completely different from teaching it, right? And understanding the textbook on it.
Yeah, because you'll get pushed. And thinking about medical sales, there's been so many instances where there's people that are driven and they are like, I'll do anything, I'll run through a wall. That motivation deteriorates to a point where you are now stuck with yourself and your true self. And you're like, can I still do this? And that's when you find out, not by choice, that's when you find out, I say, looking back, that's when I found out if I could do it or not, what I was worth, right? You can take two different directions and people are like, I can't do this anymore. And that's fine, good, whatever. But you get beat down to a point for everyone it's different. It's like for someone, I was just on a podcast the other day, sales rep who was in the operating room, gave a bad suggestion, couldn't handle it anymore, wasn't for him. And I tried to explain to him, as terrible as that situation was, everyone goes through that. Everyone goes through a situation, for me in surgical sales, where they will make a mistake. They will give the wrong advice or not have the advice at the key moment. And yes, stakes are high because the patient's on the table and the surgeon is leaning on you.
Yeah. Some cases, life or death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you going to do at that moment?
Yeah.
At that, not that split moment. It's like the time after when you're sitting with yourself and you're like, I don't know if I can do this. For others, it's in a sales meeting and they choked. They completely blanked, whatever it is. I don't know if I can do this. Others, it's, I've been working for 2 weeks straight. I don't know, like, I'm just getting worn down. I don't know if I can do this. The motivation is temporary and you get stripped down. You can figure out a way to push yourself past that. And for me, I don't know what it was for you, because I know you went through it, because everybody goes through it. To become great, you have to go through this. It's like the reason I continued on when I was sitting there like, I don't think I can do this. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not, what do I know about medical? Is I looked around and I go, all these other people are doing it. He didn't go to school for medical. He didn't go to school for sales. He's just a dude who's just figured it out. I can figure it out. And then it's hard at that moment. You think about all the negatives or every mistake you made, everything negative someone has said about you. But you're like, there's people that believe in me. I wouldn't have been hired by Rob if he didn't think I could do this. Right. There's a whole bunch of reasons out there why you should keep pushing. And for me, it was, and this is where I think I am competitive. I'm like, well, he's freaking good at this. Maybe I don't have everything he has, but there's no reason I should quit, because if I quit, they're just going to replace me with some other Joe Schmo, and they're going to have to do it.
And they'll succeed if they just keep pushing.
And if they don't, then they're going to hire another Joe Schmo, and that one will succeed.
Right.
So it might as well be me.
It's almost, yeah. I mean, it's
when that hit me, I was like,
oversimplify it, but it's basically a game of attrition. It's not
actually,
it's
they got to hire somebody.
The person who keeps pushing forward that succeeds.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. All the things we just talked about in the last, I don't know, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. The split second why. When you get to that point where and he talks about it a lot in a different context of running 200-mile races and setting records and all that stuff. It's like, that shit sucks. And you need to, I say I'm a glutton for punishment. You might word it differently, but the point is, you need to have a why, right? You have a why. So like when things get so bad, you don't want to get up in the morning. And like, whether you're an athlete, weightlifter, whatever, you're a business professional, you're a Navy SEAL, like you're gonna have these high risk, high reward, right? These are like the opportunity to make life changing money, start to create generational wealth is there in this
Yeah.
field,
Yeah.
right? But you have to understand with that, it's not all, it's not, it's a lot of suck,
Yeah.
right?
To get to
It's not a traditional, path.
It's not hitting the lotto.
Um,
Some people hit the lotto, which is getting lucky and something's just presented to you and like, holy cow, oh, thank you.
yeah,
But that's not luck.
TikTokers.
So two things. You brought up something. One, David Goggins thing is, and I've heard him say this and other people too, motivation is temporary. I think
Mhm.
Jocko too. If you're relying on your motivation, you're going to fail. You can use motivation when you're motivated.
Mhm.
You can work to get motivated for that morning, for that day, for that meeting. Put some tunes on,
Mhm.
listen to motivational stuff, pray. Everyone has a different ways of motivating themselves. But there's something deeper than that because
It's
there's
your
going to
driver.
yeah. What's your driver? Now, that's what I was going to ask. I think I want to take this deeper than something that I've never really heard people talk about. All right, what's your why? Now, did you pick your why? Did you sit down and go, that's going to be my why? I'll give you mine first. I always had a difficult time because that makes sense to me. I need to have a why when things get difficult. And it's easy when you have a kid at home, I think, right? And like, I got to do it for my kid.
Mhm.
Uh,
It's valid.
I don't know that, right? I never could pick a why. I think picking your why is not, it's almost superficial. My why is because I want a Lamborghini. It's like, then things get hard. It's like, I don't really need that Lamborghini. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for me, it was figuring out what my why is. And you only figure that out when you go through the suck and you're left and you're physically in pieces and you're just like, and you're down on yourself or you're just worn out.
Because you don't get what you don't get what you want. You get what you're willing to sacrifice for.
Right. Yeah. And at those moments is when I go, that's what matters to me. And it surfaced, right? When you're just sinking, your why surfaces. So I always found it funny how people go, what's your why? And it's presented to me in my head like, pick your why. Like, oh, I want a house on a lake or something. It's like that's superficial. Your why is much deeper than that. And it'll present itself when you put yourself through the shit and the shit beats you down. And then you're presented with that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. It's intrinsic in nature. It cannot be manufactured.
Yeah.
It does take some time and deep thought to boil it down to its truest form. And it's usually very personal,
Yeah.
right? And that varies for different people. All things relative, of course, right? So like you mentioned, a common one is like you have a family. That's a valid why. I want to provide good. And it could go deep. It could go, I mean, it really should transcend all aspects of your life, right?
Mhm.
Because nobody does this job. And I'll go as far as to say, when you look at the different professions or roads you can go down in life once you become an adult, right? Whether you go college, you go trade school, or you go military, or you go athlete, right? I just blanked out again.
It's okay. I got something for you. You were talking about in that moment, making the decision.
Split second
In
one.
that split
Yeah.
second moment. There's a guy that I know, you might know him here in Atlanta, GG Worldwide,
Yeah.
has a book called, so he's the guy who lives here in Atlanta. GG lives here in Atlanta. He's been to every single country in the world. If you want a good story, if you're bored, you talk to him. Insane amount of energy, wonderful storyteller, great person, UGA grad. The reason I bring him up, he has a book called 4 Seconds of Insane Courage. And I don't think I ruined the title of that book. And he's like, that's what life comes down to, moments. And what the book does is help you make the right decision at that moment or recognize where your head's at in that moment and how to make that decision. Because it does come down to moments where we get emotional, where we pause, where we freeze up, whether it's jumping off a cliff for the first time and bungee jumping, or it's in a sales pitch, or it's whatever the hell it is, first date with a girl or something. 4 Seconds of Insane Courage. That's how we chose to name the book. And it's a really good book. And I'm not pitching him, but I think we kind of tried to, we have been boiling down, what does it take to be great or whatever it is. And then you really get down to a moment. And sometimes it does come down to a moment. And it's like that book talks about that moment.
One moment can change the entire trajectory
Which
of
is
your
crazy
life.
to think, right? Like
Yeah.
you have this big life and all, you can make decisions, you can sit down. And,
Yeah.
you know,
I
yeah,
like to think about it. So I go to Passion City Church. Louis Giglio is the head pastor there, and he gave a really great sermon that stuck with me over the years on this idea that your entire life, and he relates it to correlating with technology, right? Code is ones and zeros, right?
mm,
It's all just ones and zeros
binary.
in a myriad of sequences. And that's what creates at its rawest form code. And our life is very similar in the aspect is every moment we have a choice of a yes or a no. And the
Mm.
aggregate of those yeses and nos ultimately create,
It's like where we find
what we
ourselves.
look. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So in the vein of finding your why, I think it's you have a leg back to the leg up, idea. You have a leg up if you can figure that out and think about it and meditate on it as you assess different career paths and that, what you're signing up, understanding what you're signing up for. What I was going to mention before is I would go so far to say, speak to most people generally, the business successes or business leaders that we revere the most are those who are entrepreneurs and founders. Right?
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
and I would argue that this nearest follow up to that is one in sales. And if you break that down,
Interesting.
right, you are a frontline
Interesting.
athlete, soldier, however you want to relate it. You're running a franchise, right? Like once you get through the BDR, SDR phase, once you get through maybe an inside sales role where you're more in a farmer role supporting an account executive,
Yeah.
right? And you get to that kind of mature sales role where you're given a material quota, a multi-million dollar quota, let's say, whether
Something
it's for
significant to your
Striker
organization.
or an SAP, they're entrusting you based on all that you've done to that point to say
Mhm.
this person is capable, right? They have successfully exemplified the traits that it takes to deliver end to end to wear those different hats we talked about, be a leader, know when to follow, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, when to lean on who, understanding your client,
Yeah.
understanding the battlefield or the landscape, the dynamics, understanding the process, right?
Yeah.
Understand, like, there's so many intricate details to get to a point where you're given that type of trust from an organization to say, hey, we're counting on you, especially if they're public. It's like,
Like a
because
key
they're
accounts
reporting
manager.
your success and what you're projecting directly affects what we're reporting to the street and our overall success as an enterprise. So like that is at least some of the organizations I've been blessed to be a part of, that's a coveted position, such as leadership in the military. Right? There's a reverence because that person is taking on a lot of responsibility, a lot of stress.
Right.
With that high reward potential, there's high risk, and so you're expected to perform. There's not really it's not a 9 to 5 job.
No.
It's not a you don't take your work home with you. It's a really a different animal of itself that I think, back to my point, is the closest thing you're going to get to starting your own organization, your own company, right?
Right. And that's also, I like that. I mean, what you just said is phenomenal. And I think a lot of people, if somebody stumbles onto hearing this somehow, some way, and they're in one of those roles, it's like they probably are getting a pat on the back that they've never gotten before.
Mm-hmm.
And the pat on the back is actually getting that role because you don't stumble into a role like that. You don't apply for a role like that.
It's not an entry
You are
level role.
recognized. It's not entry level, and it's near impossible to be placed in a role like that from outside your organization, unless you're with like a competitor, right? And you're bringing business with you in that role, and you've already been in that role,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, because when I think about that, I think key accounts, someone who's like regional with the biggest customers that the company has. We need you to manage them and build upon that, and you understand. I mean, you just went off on all those different aspects of just like of what it takes, and you're absolutely right. And you won't get to that point if you don't grind through. Yeah, no.
And remember the fundamentals. I think
Stick
it's
to
a
the fundamentals. Those are the people who do the fundamentals are in
mhm,
that role.
yeah, and that stay in that role and that are successful in that role,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Maintain the fundamentals and then fine tune those and then constantly develop. And there's a ton of peripheral opportunities to become more and more effective. And that's a list. talk about another day. But from a mindset perspective, whether we're talking about you've gotten to a point where you're given this quota and you're a true individual contributor, or you're just starting out in your sales career and you're kind of like the guppy in the fish tank, right? I think of like Boiler Room,
Yeah.
right, with Ben Affleck. That
Recco.
mindset's still there. Like, a different concept, but like time in the right, being in the right place, the right time, doing what you can, controlling the controllables, and a little bit of luck,
Mm-hmm.
right? It all comes with pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. That concept applies whether you are interviewing for a BDR role in an organization, or you have matured and proven um, your commitment, and now you're in an AE role, or maybe further down, like VP,
Right.
leadership, right, or
Right.
strategic accounts, right, like the highest
Yeah.
level of enterprise type sales, and there's different dynamics and levels to each one of those. But the constant is the mindset.
Yeah.
Right. Every time, at least recalling my journey within my sales profession, that's been the constant, right? To the point where I've been on teams where I'm significantly the youngest guy in the room. And it's equally intimidating as it is like, I'm here though.
Yep.
Like, I'm here. And you have to recognize that. Back to shout out on David Goggins' book. Like, you got to remember he has the concept of the cookie jar. When you're
Yeah.
questioning yourself, when you're experiencing imposter syndrome, which you will undoubtedly experience in a sales role.
Yes.
Specifically, remember who the F you are, right?
Yeah.
How'd you get there?
Yeah.
And stick to those.
Yes.
Right. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Right. It's a fine balance. Like, of course, develop, be open mind, but like
Yes.
stick to what got you there.
It's what you said at the very beginning of this is
Yeah.
the balance. Well, I said balance, but it's the balance of remaining confident in who you are and your capabilities, but also being humble enough to recognize that you need to be coachable.
Right.
And what they say it everywhere, but in the operating room is when you don't know, you say, I don't know.
More credible than trying to
But
BS.
the one thing better that you can say is, but I'll find out.
Correct.
But I'll get you the answer.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm going to get you the answer.
In this
Whether it's in the moment and you're calling a senior rep or texting the helpline from your company or whatever it is, but do not. There's certain times where you fake it till you make it. And that's more of like composure. Fake it till you make it, right? The way you present yourself, not in terms of making shit on the spot.
Presentation is important. And I don't want to like stack rank as much because that's highly subjective. And I've seen, successful peers who are complete opposites. Like, this guy's highly analytical and efficient in operations, right? He's quick to respond. Like, these are the little things that we overlook and think,
Yeah.
quick to respond, just confirming little things, confirming receipt, right? Like, actually following up when you say you're going to follow up and say, I don't know, but I'm going to get the answer to it, and actually come back and get the answer in a timely fashion. Those little things, again, trust is built in drops and lost in buckets, right?
Right.
You can easily mess up your relationship in a business context with a customer by missing that mark, right?
There's okay, so when you first said it, I was like, the person who is doing that, when they're like out for a week or they leave the company, they are sorely missed. It's almost like they're underappreciated because they're doing all the right things that should be done. But then when that person leaves or someone replaces them, you're like, damn, I miss that person because they did all the little things right.
Right.
The second thing I was going to say is that is where a lot of the youth or the newer people to organizations or even those applying drop the ball. How the response rate or I've always called it over communication, even though I know it's the wrong word.
Bias for over communication is better than.
Yes. Let somebody tell you stop texting me or stop calling me. Obviously, you're not trying to bother someone or pester or anything like that. And we're talking inter-organization, not your customer. Well, your customer too.
There's a different level of tact.
Message received, even though there's no response required, saying message received. Even though you do not have to say, you have a meeting, I'm on my way, I'll be there at the time.
Yeah.
Giving them the heads up that you're going to be there. Just like showing that you are present and diligent and this is important to you. And I am on the wavelength of what we have going on, right? I've heard, I've received, I'm there, and then you can take it further. I'll be there early. Would you like a cup of coffee? But
Right.
like showing up at the right time, fantastic. Showing up early, fantastic. Supposed to be done. Giving a heads up on the way. Reaching out the day before. Hey, just want to confirm. If it's, there's certain times when with a customer, you don't want to do that because you give them an excuse to say, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm busy tomorrow. But taking those extra steps to over communicate are key.
Go the extra mile. Yeah. Attention to detail and intentionality, whether you're talking about interpersonal relationships with someone you're dating, directly translates. It's relationships 101.
Yeah.
Right.
The communication aspect.
Yeah.
The GM of my branch back in the day really
The
pushed.
GM of your branch back in the day.
So I'm speaking work lingo. Our organization, I was in the orthopedic division, and every city or region has its own branch, essentially the hub where all the sales reps are out of. And I was out of the New York, New Jersey branch, and phenomenal branch, highly intimidating when you first walk in. No matter how much experience I had, I thought I was ready for the role. I was just there and I was ready to learn. One thing that the GM of the branch, GM might not sound like a big role when it comes to directors and VPs and all that, but he ran the show for that branch and it was an elite branch. And the next role he took was extremely high within the corporate organization. So essentially, he was just before corporate and dealing with boots on the ground. He was managing boots on the ground, and he was the intermediary between corporate and the branch. And what he implored upon everyone is everyone is a leader in this organization, even if no one reports to you. That message was pushed on everyone, and I pushed it, and I know everyone believed it, and we made sure everyone believed it. And it's like, because if you don't have anyone reporting to you, you are a leader of yourself. You have to treat yourself as someone who needs to be led. Your manager can't be with you 24/7. They have a zillion things to do. There are certain values. There's a mission, there's the value, and then there's the culture that the company expects. There's certain things that the company needs, and you walk with that and your own expectations of yourself, and you lead yourself in the right way. I think we were branch of the year. We were always consistently the most successful branch, or one of always in the running, because of that concept of everyone feeling like they were a leader, despite the branch of who reported to who. You have ownership, Jocko Willink, of what you do and the impact that it makes on the overall organization. Just because your title is whatever it is, associate sales rep, in there's a reason why you're here, and what you do has an impact, positive or negative. You brought up a point before, and I was like, I can't help but think about that, and that has been one of the most impactful things in my career that I've heard, felt, and breathed and lived that made an impact on me and those around me. And that's why I felt like I was with a team of winners, and I think it was that mindset that everyone had. They're going out in their own little world, managing their territories with all these people, but they were leading that. That's mine, right? And there wasn't like, because you can get into the thing where it's like, why did he get that role and I didn't get that, or I didn't get approached to ask to be the manager of this. And it's like, despite all that, in a way, it's kind of like making people feel important, right? Like, hey, you're important. You're doing that. But in reality, if we're going to be successful, every decision that every single person makes matters.
Right. It goes back to controllables.
Yeah.
You have a direct sphere of influence.
Yes.
Maximize that.
Yeah.
Do well with what you are entrusted with, and progression, promotion, success will inherently be a byproduct of that. I think from like, I'm all about mindset, and like transitioning from military for me I think is a really good and extreme example of this, but it translates in other transitions, right? Military are very hierarchical. They're saying stay in your lane, right? It's stay in your lane, do your job, head down.
Yeah.
It's above my pay grade. Don't worry about it.
question
It's not my job. That's his job, right?
Mhm.
And that's just the culture of the military, for better or indifferent. But when you get into the private sector in business, and more specifically sales, I think one of the best lessons that one of my leaders early on at SAP, the regional VP, very successful, and he's still there, and he's progressed in his career, sat me down because he noticed this mindset that I had, which was very overly structured, just by way of how I was trained.
So it's
as a
supposed to be,
military, right? So thankfully I've evolved from then, but I had a mindset where I looked at myself as either above, right? And in my old uniform, it was a lower ranking person. Therefore, I spoke to a higher ranking person in a certain way, stayed in
Yeah.
my lane. I didn't challenge. Call it subservient.
Yes. Yes.
Or I had my peers, which was a different dynamic, or at a certain point I outranked people, right? And I would speak down, for lack of a better word, right?
Yeah.
More of I'm speaking at you versus with you.
You're here and I'm here.
Right. And so one of the biggest like mind shifts or paradigm shifts that he helped me realize and then develop through again the process was seeing myself as a sales professional, as an equivalent peer, as a value add
Yeah.
to whoever I was speaking to, whether it was an end user, right, a low manager, director, all the way up to as I progressed to C-level executives. There's the approach is different, the demeanor, the presence is different,
Yeah.
and they have to see you as a credible, trusted advisor, as someone that they're going to do business with, right, and invest money with ultimately. And in order for them to see you like that, you have to see yourself like that, which goes back to the authenticity being a true one of one and not this person, you know, in the office.
Because they feel that on you.
Right.
Percent. So that's why they say a good leader empowers his people. And so, like, how do you empower them? It's not by, obviously, again, it's a balance of positioning yourself and understanding that you have this level of responsibility. But if you don't look at it in this hierarchical way, rather, we're all working for the same organization, but we're in different roles. My job is to ensure that you're doing yours or get you what you need or whatever it is. And if you look at it more on a horizontal level, there's massive impact on it. Now, there are times when you go, listen, let's cut the shit. You need to obey the rules and the guidelines, right? And this is just the way this
There's a time and a place to
shit rolls
follow chain
downhill.
of command.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, right. But at the same time is massive value. And then there's real impact when the people on the lower levels feel empowered and then they walk around at a certain level. So there's so many ways I can take this. That's one. Two is when I sold the Mako robot, we had to having equal business stature with our customers is something that one of the key sales reps said. He's like, this is what I do. He goes, equal business stature, equal business stature. That's why he's so good. He sits in with the C-suite. And I think I told you this before. He'll sit with the CEO of the largest healthcare system in New York City, which is like, he doesn't get more elite than that. And I'm not looking up to him hoping that he buys my stuff. I'm having equal conversation with him because I provide a solution to a problem that his organization has. And I have to understand what he's going through at a level that I have my needs too. You're not my only customer. I have people to report to. I have an organization and people that are like, we all have a tons of things going on, and let's find where we both are at and understanding what they're going through and looking eye to eye rather than, what a lot of young or inexperienced or poor sales reps do. It's like come within hope of rather than like I'm here to recognize and I understand what you're going through. That's when you make a big change.
Level set.
You
Yeah.
level set. One of the things a couple of things I learned when in interviewing a lot of people is the people that I hired are the ones that fully understand the role that they're going for, not the company and everything that comes with it.
Mhm.
And I always say, this guy just wants to have this company's name on his business card so he can feel important. So he can show his parents, so he can show the girls at the bar, he can whatever. But in reality is show me that you've done the homework to fully understand what you're going to be doing day in and day out and you're still okay with it. One of the difficult things when interviewing, especially intelligent kids out of colleges and universities and maybe have some experience, is like reading past the prepared responses that they have and getting through to the authenticity of that person and figuring out questions to figure out who is this person really. I like context, figuring out about their past, but there's questions that can only be answered by someone expressing how they truly handle things. Is one. And two is, are they fully prepared to take on this role? One of the best things someone can do is tell me that they're interviewing for the same role somewhere else. Okay. So you really do want this role. You're just interviewing companies to see which one's going to hire you. And then on top of that is if that person presents himself to me or herself to me saying, I'm going to be good in this role. I know what it takes and I have a passion for it. As crazy as it sounds, I know it's a tough role. I have a passion for it for whatever reason. I'm actually interviewing, that person's interviewing me to see if I'm going to be a good manager, if this organization is going to give them what they need to be successful. I'm on the hot seat to sell them on the fact that they're going to get the training, the guidance, the support that they need to be successful and find their success.
Absolutely.
That's who I want on my team. You present yourself in that way, and that's what I'm trying to show people. It's like the authenticity piece is a lot of things right there, and then it's also a passion for the specific thing that you're sitting down for. That's why your resume needs to be drafted in a specific way for that specific role, for that specific company, for that specific manager, and the way you handle your approach to the meeting and in those meetings or interviews is a passion for that specific thing that you're going for. If you do that, how can they not hire you? You know what I mean?
Yes. And
Good answer.
caveat, a layer to that
Yeah.
is not just what you're saying, as equally important as it is to have thoughtful answers and authentically articulate who you are, why you want the role, your understanding of the challenges, right, based on your limited, exposure through an internship or just research, right?
Right.
Is how do you translate whatever other experiences you've had up until that point in a way that resonates and connects with them? Because the big idea, specifically in a sales interview, and I've been on both sides of this now, having been a mentor and a part of early talent interviewing committees, is they want to see the greatest show of what we're talking about. The understanding of this is treating the interview like a sales call. Even though you haven't, if we're talking about entry level, even though you haven't run a sales campaign, you've never effectively done the job.
Yeah.
Do you understand it well enough that you're going to treat the interview as best as you possibly can, like a sales process?
Yes.
Are you going to drive the conversation, answer the questions, know when to listen to understand, not to respond, and give a manufactured response that
Yes.
sounds canned or is pre-scripted, right? And then ultimately have thoughtful questions prepared, right? And this is bar none the most important. Are you going to close them? Are you going to ask the uncomfortable questions, i.e., based on the other candidates?
Right.
And I remember doing this, and it's fun to think about now. But like, based on the other candidates, like, how do I stack rank? Right?
Mhm.
Shows coachability, shows willingness to receive constructive criticism or feedback. Like,
Yeah.
it's less about what you're saying and more about you're saying it and the motive or the intent behind it that speaks volumes.
The intent behind what you're saying.
Right. It shows that you're thinking the way that they want you to.
You can say an infinite number of things. You can ask an infinite number of questions. What you're saying and asking is showing where your head's at, is showing where your mind's at, right? So if you're asking a financial question, you're financially driven. If you're stating something that is generic, then you're presenting yourself in a certain way. If I'm asking a question that is based around what are the best reps in your organization doing, that makes them great. Right, that can be a manufactured question. But if your other questions, the other things that you say, and the way that you're asking that or saying it presents itself in the way that is genuine in the fact that I want to be great. What is your 1, 2, and 3 rep doing? What are your worst, like the last guy that you let go of, like why? And so that I can figure that out, right? Like, whether I've been in sales for 10 years or whether I've never been in sales, I still want to understand if I'm going to join this organization, how do I be great? How am I going to be great at it?
Yeah.
So that closing statement's phenomenal. And then the overall demeanor of how you present yourself is pivotal to everything. Now, how do you do that? How do you ask these questions? How do you figure out what to ask? How do you figure out what to say it takes to be great in the role? How do you know whether or not, how do you know what you're going to be doing in that role? Like day in and day out. How do you find that out?
We're giving away all the answers on this podcast.
What kind of work? And that's the goal, because there's so many different aspects to it. I didn't realize how many videos I'd be making to just how do you get into medical sales. And I swear I'm not trying to just fill up the thing with a whole bunch of videos, because that's actually a negative. Like if I'm giving too many videos, then they're like, I'm just trying to get a job here. Yeah. But it's like there are so many things here that the person who goes through my training, my process the entire way through they're going to be a phenomenal sales rep because doing all those things are the things that you need to do to be a great sales rep. Does that make sense?
It's the things you did not learn in college.
So we were just talking about presenting yourself at equal business stature with someone at the C-suite, right? And understanding what they're going through. So you're speaking to them at their level, understanding what they're going through and how they're making the decision, why they're making the decision, right? That takes an immense level of homework and experience, right? Experience helps.
It's all the same, though.
But it's all the
At a
same
different level.
to truly walk into the meeting and know that a deficit of your patient volume at your facility over here has increased because of this. Is that right?
Right.
And then this one, you guys sold that off and you purchased this organization because of that. It seems like based on your advertising, I spoke with your director of this and your VP of that, and they were explaining to me that the initiative over the next 3 years for your organization is to focus on this aspect. I spoke to your competitor over at such and such hospital. And it seems like an issue that's going on in this area is a lack of nurses, right? You guys are going to third parties and you're paying an excess amount. Have you guys considered this as a solution to that problem? If you're coming with that approach,
Come with the perspective.
yeah. And
Even
let them tell you
if
actually
you're wrong. Yeah. If you're wrong, it shows you still took interest, did your diligence.
Young man, it seems like you did your homework, but let me straighten some things out for you. Yeah. Please straighten things out for me because I'm trying to understand your organization before I even present you with anything. There's a chance that you have no need for what I have to sell you right now. However,
let's figure it out together and see if it's a good fit.
And if it's not now, actually, there is another company that I know that you might be interested in talking to them.
I wouldn't go that far, but
I would. For the long term, though?
If I haven't,
well, I don't know what tech sales is like where you're just sending them to another software system.
Sure.
But
there's partners. No, it's good. Yeah, I think what we're saying is you just articulated it, the same premise at a senior level, dealing with an executive or a decision maker. It's the same it's the same kind of preparation, the same mindset, and the same attention to detail or thought process for an interview.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully, if you really want something, you're going to naturally do your research on it.
Yeah.
If you know who you're interviewing with, do a little bit of research on who they are.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a quick LinkedIn search, right?
You have to immerse yourself
and take interest.
Yeah. Because, and this goes back to what I originally said at the beginning, where it's difficult for people who have done it to articulate it in a way where it connects to those who haven't. So if you're to say, come with thoughtful questions, do your research. And it's like, okay, how? What is the research? Like, what does that mean? Right? How do I articulate? What is a thoughtful question? I'm thinking, but I don't even know where to begin. And that's the guidance that I give. So
I think about
start following.
Go ahead.
So on LinkedIn, start following these organizations. Start following and trying to connect with these companies. Obviously, you want to literally speak with them, and that's a whole art form to try and figure out how to do that. But at the very least, if you know you want to get into software sales, if you know you want to get into medical sales, if you know you want to get into orthopedic sales, start following all of it and immerse yourself. Even if you have no idea what you're looking for, it's going to present itself so that when you're in the meeting, you're, oh, holy crap. Like if I don't know, let's do something very bland and basic. I don't know, sports. If I've never watched basketball before, but suddenly I want to get a job with the New York Knicks, I'm going to start following all NBA things, all New York Knicks things, all New York things, anything that has to do with that. And then when I find myself in a conversation that is meaningful, I now have context to what's going on in that world, in that industry. Maybe I have no knowledge to give, but people will recognize if you're embedded in that space. You'll subconsciously have built a foundational understanding of what is going on in that space. And if you can, and that will present itself, that will show this
passion, you cannot fake that.
Fake that. Correct.
I think what you're saying is, if I'm understanding correctly, at a conceptual level, whether you're interviewing with a company and you're trying to show that you did your homework, that you're really hungry for the opportunity, or you're already at an organization and you're now in a similar situation or circumstance or meeting with a client, is connecting that why, the intrinsic core why you wake up every day, to whatever it is you're talking about, to create genuine passion, right?
Yeah.
Because people buy from people. I remember when I started at Dell, not everybody is crazy about technology and selling data center solutions.
Right.
But one thing that I thought was cool about this program for early talent was the coaching and the tips about exactly what we're talking about. Right. And it was, energy is contagious, calm is contagious, nerves are contagious, right? Excitement, passion is contagious, right? And these are emotions you can't manufacture and transcend if they're not authentic. So to land that, it's how do you connect your interpersonal why to whatever it is that you're doing, right? And hopefully, if it's like in my space, what I could talk about technology. Hey, I know that in this industry, technology, let's say healthcare, is enabling the acceleration of cures for this, right?
Yeah.
Tie it
Yeah.
back to
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
personal. Medical is probably easier, right?
Mhm.
More direct, right? It's like, hey,
Helping
there's
patients.
something in my story, in my
Mhm.
why, whether it was past or something I'm trying to attain that personally ties to this, and that's going to stir up, what people are attracted to,
Yeah.
the passion.
Find a reason to become passionate
Yeah,
for it, because I think that's a phenomenal point, and that's speaking to people who don't know what they want to do yet.
start there.
Start there. Give yourself a reason to become passionate about it. Not that you are.
Yeah.
There's an infinite number of people before, now, and later that don't know what their passion are and don't know, and they'll maybe never figure that out. Do what you love and you'll never work again. Like
Hmm.
that is just so true in a way, but like not everybody is totally in love with painting, so they're not going to become a
Hmm.
painter for the rest of their lives. And even if I was, I loved painting. Now I'm going to add business to it, and I'm going to hope that people buy my paintings for the rest of my life. That ruins the whole
Hmm.
idea of painting. So that's why it never made sense to me. You will feel fulfillment, because I think fulfillment is the key word of being happy with your life. You will feel fulfilled when you feel useful, when you feel that you have contributed and you've done a good job and I've worked towards something, and boom, there's the benefit. That's why sales is so fulfilling. I did all this work. This person didn't buy this, and then this one bought, and then you get that awesome. Now it's the paycheck, it's the
Satisfaction. It's
satisfaction.
truly in the journey.
Think about it becomes that, yeah, 100%. But think about all the people who work for a corporate company. All right, I'm going to go with Biocomposites, who sells calcium sulfates. Phenomenal company, worked there for 3 years, loved every second of it, and one of the highlights of my life. Small
Yeah.
company. No one in this world grows up thinking, I want to work for a calcium sulfate company and provide calcium sulfates, right?
Yeah.
However, when I was there, everybody that worked there really freaking enjoyed it. Not just the salespeople, not just the managers, but the women who worked the desk and answered the phone calls, because everyone felt that they were contributing to the growth of
To
this
one mission,
organization.
the organizational why.
And we were legitimately changing the way people were healing. And it was like, we're doing something here. Again, no one has this passion for calcium sulfates. However, and it was just this thing in a box and you mix it up but it was just bigger than that. As a young person, allow yourself to find something that you can become passionate about. And the passion might not be the thing. It might be knowing that you're contributing to a greater thing.
Right. Understand the big picture and
Yeah.
how it ties back to you as an individual.
Yeah.
Understand that you're only going to find fulfillment when you are part of something that's greater than yourself. And you said something about happiness and purpose, and it racked my memory on a Jordan Peterson blurb.
Mhm.
He was talking about how people often say, I just want to be happy in life. And while they genuinely mean that, they genuinely feel that they're not articulating it correctly, right? Happiness is a fleeting emotion, right?
Right.
Now, joy, as he described it, is finding joy or finding purpose in what you do and in what you do in life is and he's Christian too. So like you
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
understand the biblical
Yeah.
pretext is to live is to suffer until we go to heaven in the Christian faith, right? To be on earth, you're here momentarily, and then you go to be with your Father in heaven. But while you're here on earth, it is to suffer. So how do you find joy? How do you find purpose? You find something worth suffering for.
Wow.
If you can find a purpose, if you could find the why, which I think one of the first things we just talked about in the session
Figuring out your
is
why.
if you can understand that, and David Goggins, right, again, recapping that, articulates it as the 3-second decision, when it sucks the most, like, have you already made the decision preemptively so that you don't you don't falter at the moment it's tested. Already pre-decided this so that
Yeah.
when that time comes, I already have my answer ready. I don't have to think about it. And
Mhm.
that's to keep going, right? So if I understand that and I can
Whether it's a 100-mile marathon and your toenail, I haven't done it. Your toenail
Falling off.
falls off. You can't feel your legs. And
Right.
you're like, and then you go into your cookie jar of whys of like why I'm
You've already
doing anything.
predetermined that
Because
failure or quitting is not an option.
it's going to suck. It's
But
going
you're
to suck.
but that's an extreme example. But I think like day to day, like
But
most
yeah,
of us are not going to face that kind of extreme. But if you could find a reason,
it's a
like,
version
simply
of it.
put, where you wake up every day and like not every today or this job, this week, this quarter, whatever is going to be glamorous and it's going to really suck at times. But you look forward to doing that because the suffering is fruitful. It's not just for the sake of it. It's not vanity. I'm just going to go suffer for the hell of it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it because it's going to yield fruit, right? What's the fruit? Whatever you define as success, right?
Yes. That's why 100, well said. Because the people that are at the lowest in their life, the people that we know in this world that just can't figure it out, and that's temporary, right? It could be for someone's entire life, are the ones that find themselves constantly going for instant satisfaction, drugs, alcohol, and they're not moderation, sexual, whatever's, all these different things. They might not have a why, or they haven't created a cookie jar for David Goggins, where they can find themselves going, like, I'm in it when I'm in a tough spot, what am I going to do? Or when I'm questioned with, do I need to go home right now? Or should I stay out tonight? Right? What am I going to do in this moment? Like, no, you know what? Like, this is important. I don't want to, like, what you just said is like the fucking cap off right there. That was, I think that's what it really comes down to. And that's also why people find why religion is incredibly important to them, because they're within a community of people and they're all sharing this understanding that when shit hits the fan, where do you turn to? Where do you look? Right?
Yeah,
That's a whole nother level, but
that's part two.
it's all different versions of it. But I'm gonna end it right where you said that.
It's good. Wrap it up. Have fun with it. Life's a journey. Life's a journey, and from personal experience, and it's a weird dichotomy, if that's the right word, that
Jocko.
you hear these sayings, and it's so true. And just like words are not coming out of my mouth. So, but I'll just simply put it like when you reach these moments of success, like you land the biggest deal of your career to date, you truly understand like the joy was in the journey, in the suffering. You almost get melancholy about like, man, those nights I spent, in the office or like whatever it is,
Isn't that crazy?
overtime, exhausted, struggling. Like there was something to be said about the suffering of that. I felt
Joy
more,
thinking about it.
yeah, because it's very anticlimactic. Like you win and it's like it's great for a couple moments, but then you're like, man, I enjoyed the resistance,
Yeah.
you know?
There's a clip, a meme or video online viral, star basketball player.
Mhm.
Basketball? And they're like, what are you gonna miss? And the response that he gives, they make fun of him because he sounds like a complete idiot. But anyone who's really listening, like, completely gets the guy. He was the locker room with the guys. I might have blew it up. Maybe it was like, no, it was cafeteria. The cafeteria. And it's like, what, dude?
Sounds funny, but profound.
Like
Yeah.
when you miss the military, is it, shooting a gun or no? It was amongst
The mundane.
the mundane daily. Like I miss being in the dugout with the guys. Like when I'm proud of what I did at certain companies. Sure, it was the sale, but like it was also like the grind to figure out up until at the moment it sucked.
hmm
Yeah.
Navy SEALs, there's a known they structure the end of buds training, the 6 month training, because they understand this at a psychological level, right? They've studied this and
Yeah.
have thousands of data points for as long as Buzz has been around, but they, at a higher level, closely monitor the graduates of Buds the following days of Hell Week because of this psychological idea. They get to this point and they think they're going to feel this
Yeah, I did.
of accomplishment. And while that it's true, it doesn't meet the expectation, right? And so a lot of them get actually really depressed, and so they keep a close watch on these people. Also, they've been awake for like 3-4 days straight and like
Right.
tortured.
They
Like,
expect
that's
it.
extreme
They expect
example.
that's
It's it's so much of this. So this is why I love talking about
I
sales as a profession, because it just easily and legitimately translates to so much of the rest of your life. We talk about like interviewing. Jesse Itzler has a cool concept called the build the life resume, right? And you've heard it in different ways. Like I've heard at least like the person over the resume, right?
mhm.
And it's a simple concept, but it's pretty profound. It's like that interviewer understands the skills we're talking about. They're trying to understand and examine and listen to your delivery, and there's so many nuances
Yes.
of the level of understanding they're trying to gather from this short little conversation to try to get to know you,
Yeah.
right? In like a 2 to 5 interview,
Yeah. 30 minutes,
process.
and I got other people waiting for the
Right.
next person.
Right. Uh,
Hmm.
but like Jesse, again, people buy from people, start with why, right? We want to talk about like ethos, pathos, logos, right? Start with the ethos, right? Which is like who you are as a person. Forget the job for a second. Like talk about who you are as a person. Talk about like, even if it's a completely unrelated professional story, right? How did you behave in a certain situation, right? You were faced with a challenge. What did you do? Why did you do it? What were the outcomes, right?
I gotta research that. I've
And
heard ethos, pathos, always, but
yeah, and Greek word, obviously, but it's just like the ethos, the morals of someone, the pathos, the logical, or the pathology of set, and then the logos, like the reasoning, right? Those are like the three core elements. Anyways, but the life resume is interesting. It's like I love it because it's massively simplifies all of this. It's like if you can build, and this is what I love doing, and I know you do too, like if you can do just be a renaissance type of person and have many interests and like just try different things,
yeah.
right? To have the ability to talk about that honestly, like
Yeah.
you're not lying that you went scuba diving in Cape Town, South Africa, but you can talk about it
Hmm.
genuinely and like have all these reference points that you have ultimately like in your arsenal or your bag, right? Your
Yes.
toolbox, whatever, to connect with people. Like
There's a
that's just natural human connection. And it's like build your life resume, build the end of your life, like outside of work context. Like you're not going to look back on your life and be and remember the promotion you got over the family trip you took to wherever, right? Or like how you were able to, be at your son's graduation and make it really special by X, Y, and Z, right? Like,
and understand that those moments are gonna be powerful.
right.
Either
And they're going to
you might not
directly
recognize it in the moment.
they're going to directly translate into success. It's just like inherent natural um
Yeah.
momentum.
So a couple things to that. There's one of the things that I preach is that the resume, your physical resume, which is like a one-page document, if you're young, maybe two, if you've been around for a while, is this traditional document that everyone has, and it just summarizes your work experience. But you should build what I call a brag book, or what people call a brag book. You can change the name to personal profile. You can make whatever document you want and show people who you are in it beyond the resume as best as you can. So I continue to change it.
In the traditional resume format, you're saying, or something else?
Here's your resume, here's your cover letter, and then here's this document that you've created about yourself that you hand over. Now you can't put yourself on paper, but as best as you can,
Mm-hmm.
and then mix that with why you're going to be good for the role.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's about, to help. I say at the very least, it helps open up the conversation with that person when they're looking and they're trying to figure you out in 30 minutes. Hiring managers are sales managers in our world. Sales managers became sales managers because they were a really good sales rep,
Mm-hmm.
not because they went to school to become a manager, not because they know how to interview people, which I think that one of the things that I want to create later on is how to interview to figure out who's going to be good and who's going to last and all these different
From
things
the interviewer perspective.
from the interviewer perspective.
Okay.
Because that's difficult.
I think
Especially with all
I think it's just the inverse of what we're talking about.
Uh-huh.
Not to overly
How
simplify
do you
it.
ask
There's
questions? That's why I wrote down ethos, pathos, logos.
right.
How do you figure out these things? How you ask these questions so you can dive into that?
How do you understand what we talked about, the whole man assessment?
So
What does that mean?
One of the best hires I ever had, and I'm not taking credit for it. He came my way, and I was wondering, Ken Fobian, if you see this, my bad, bro. But when I saw his photo of him with a koala, it's kind of like a weird photo
Yeah.
on his Facebook.
Yeah.
Because I did my research on it.
Yeah.
And I remember showing the picture to the other managers. I was like, is this somebody that we want to hire? And I showed him the picture of this. And what it came down to is like, this guy's got more life experience than freaking all of we do put together. He had traveled to 40 something countries when we hired him.
Mm-hmm.
He was in his early
He's
20s.
an interesting person.
And he was easily accepted by everyone he met because he was a great human, but he had so many life experiences and it correlated, right? Like
His perspective was brought in.
Freaking one of his stories is that he was in Cambodia and he shot a bazooka at a empty car and he was like, yeah, it was freaking sick, so they let me do it. And it's like, what other stories you got, bud?
Yeah.
Everyone
Story,
loved him.
stories tell.
And so, he's doing his thing right now in Florida as a sales manager himself. But
That's cool.
like the man, what'd you say? Jesse Itzler, married to Mrs. Spanks here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
The man beyond the resume. What is it? Sorry.
Just talks about the building the life resume.
The life resume.
Mm-hmm. I mean, his book, 30 Days with a SEAL, which is obviously Goggins, talks about the fact that he was even doing that.
Interviews.
He would bring him he went everywhere he went. So, like, he would bring him on these executive business meetings, and they would be like, what's the deal, dude? Be like, it's Navy SEAL, and I'm having him basically just be a life coach, an intensive life coach for 30 days, 24/7.
Run in the rain.
And they're like,
cold water.
And he's like, dude, whatever you're doing, we're investing. Just had him with him doing burpees, sweating out his suit, 10 minutes before the meeting started.
That's crazy.
Like, dude, this is wild. We have never seen this before, but we're in.
I got Jesse's calendar on the wall behind
the big ass calendar.
The big ass calendar.
Yeah. I think I heard Morgan come in.
They're probably sleeping. He's gonna become an American tomorrow.
He's American today.
I'm gonna go at 10 to
his ceremony.
Yeah. His pledge.
This is great.
It's good, man. I knew it was gonna be great, but no, man, really appreciate it.
It was good. It was interesting. Like, can we hit pause? Oh shit, we didn't even hit play this whole time.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
Stuff.
Don't say that.